Good morning. I'm going to first say that I couldn't decide if I wanted to just type this all out and put it as a long post or if I wanted to just say it or read it. So I just decided that it's probably easier to type it up and then kind of go off of that, mainly because people may not want to read a long post. Sometimes in today's time, we're more apt to just watch a short video. Let me also begin by saying that I don't really care to post much on controversial topics anymore, and really there's four reasons for that. First, because let's be honest, virtually everyone, or most of us, more than likely have our minds made up, and either we're not really open to listening to the flip side of the coin or learning about it. And maybe that's okay, maybe not. The second, I really just chalk it up to Eric's death. That death just profoundly changed the way I look at life and what's important to me. But if you want to know more about that, ask me later. Third, there's always that fear today of being unfriended or shunned or disowned for having an outlook that might be different from any side of whatever topic is often going on at the moment. That's kind of sad to feel like I have to live that way because there are just times that my opinions don't align with anyone, I don't think. Lastly, I honestly just don't think people really care about my 2 cents. I'm not the super intellectual smart person. I probably don't really have anything of value to add, but I'm also sure there's those people that think just because I don't post about such things very often that maybe I don't care or I'm not engaged. And again, honestly, if that's their takeaway value of me, then in that instance, it falls on them, not me. Sometimes, though, I have thoughts and feelings on something, perspectives that just creep through my brain over and over. My heart will be heavy sometimes. It'll keep me awake at night. And I feel like it just beckons me and calls me to write it down or say it over and over again. And it's that feeling just won't really abate unless I do that. And this is probably or is one of those times. So let me preface this by saying I did not watch the Olympic game openings. When the first post started coming up about it, actually the very first post I saw was from a friend, and he did not even reference the Olympic Games. He just mentioned in passing that he felt that the Eucharist was being made fun of. And I thought it was kind of sad, and I honestly chalked it up to a Saturday Night Live skit because nothing is really hands off on Saturday Night Live. So I just, posted, gee, I thought that was sad, and I did let them know, this is the Eucharist just is necessary for me personally because sometimes I don't know how I would face each day if I did not join with fellow believers in that on Sundays. So I didn't watch the Olympic game opening, and I'm going to be honest with you here, and I'm going to date myself here. I haven't really watched or enjoyed the Olympic game openings for quite a while. I kind of miss the more throwback fanfare, I guess, for a better lack of phrase, fanfare and pageantry of some of the older Olympic openings. Think about the 1992 Barcelona opening or the 1984 Inspiring Orchestral Movement by John Williams. Those are kind of the things that I miss and really liked. So I just really haven't watched. So it was not nice, but I was kind of going into it with an objective mind when all of these posts started coming up because I simply had not watched. So I sat back the last couple of days, and I've read post after post after post, and I've looked at picture after picture for analysis that people have put up. I've scanned and read article after article. And honestly, all of it has just left me sad and confused. Mainly because I'm coming at this from the point of view of a believer. Now, what I'm going to say isn't necessarily contained to just believers, but it's going to reference some of the scriptures that Christians kind of look to quite a bit. So I've seen quite a bit of not civil discourse. I've seen a lot of hateful comments, and this is from both sides of the spectrum. I've seen a lot of degenerated debate. I've seen a lot of stone throwing from glass houses, and I have wholly seen unholy actions towards our neighbor during this time. So what do I think about the Olympic opening? Does it really matter what I think? Does it matter to you what I think? Some would say yes, and if I took my faith seriously, that I should care about it. Some say if I think one way about the situation, then I obviously don't understand as a Christian. While some think if I think another way, I must be really extreme. So, my friends, I am so tired. I am so very sad and tired of this all or nothing, turning every little thing into a fight or a political snippet or a sound bite or a 15 or 20-second reel or meme. So what do I think? Well, let me tell you what I think. I think that the boat of my faith, the belief system that I subscribe to, is not rocked or attacked by the storm of passing temporal fads and things like sensational headlines, art interpretation, musical numbers, those sound bites, those reels, those memes. But I will tell you what I feel like rocks my faith, attacks my belief system. When Christ was speaking to an angry crowd, and I'm referencing the text from John 8 here, there was this angry crowd, and they had these stones in their hands, and we're not talking about little pebbles you skip on a pond. You know, these were big stones. They had these stones in their hands, and they were shouting and really ready to stone to death or kill this woman that they had caught in the act of an affair, and they drug her out into the streets because that was their law then. So Jesus began addressing this crowd, and as he did, he knelt down and started writing in the sand, the text tells us. And he says to them while he's writing, and I'm paraphrasing this, "Any one of you who is perfect, go ahead and throw that first stone." Now, the text of John 8 doesn't specifically tell us what Jesus was writing as he spoke, but many biblical scholars believe that he was writing out all of the sins of those holding the stones that were ready to kill the woman. And guess what? When he said that, they all began dropping their stones one by one and leaving. So on a personal level, that leads me to believe that he was indeed writing down all of the things that each of those people did to prove that they weren't perfect either. But here we are, hundreds of thousands of years later, still holding those stones and still crying for that metaphorical death anytime we see one thing that we feel like attacks our faith. That will rock my faith. That will make me feel like my faith is being attacked when people are picking up their stones. In a 2020-2022 statistical analysis, in the United States, there were roughly 44.2 million people who lived in a food insecure household. Now, food insecure, is maybe having barely enough to get by, not really having enough to make consistent meals, or not having any food, really. Of those 44 million, 7 million were children. Food pantries had found, and they're still finding now, unfortunately, that it's getting increasingly difficult to keep up with that demand. Now, over the years, I've known quite a few people who worked at a food pantry. I even had to visit a couple myself during extremely hard times during COVID. And between some people who worked at pantries and just hearing other people talk about food pantries, I often would hear things like, I quit helping because of those people. I'm not sure who those people are, but I've heard that quote before. Gee, they drive a better car than me. Why are they here? They have designer purses, they have nails, they have jewelry, or cell phones, or they have this or that, or this or that. Now, I'm not saying people don't abuse the system. Let's just get that out of the way. We know people do. It has always happened. That's unfortunately just life. But the greater majority statistically really do need that help in some way, whether it's a short-term or long-term thing. But I found that heavy stipulations are put upon those who they think are worthy or not to receive really the most basic human need and right, which is food security. I mean, how dare those people not live by my standards is how that all comes off. Don't they know I have the truth? And by God, if people don't work, they don't eat. No food, no water, no clothing for you. Now, again, certainly there's a balance. I'm not saying that's not true or it isn't true. But what I'm saying is those people are making the judgments and deciding who's worthy or not. And I find it funny that in the face of that, the text of Matthew 25 kind of goes out the window based on who they think is worthy or not. Many of you'll know that text, and it's about Jesus addressing some people, and he's saying, give food to the hungry, give water to the thirsty, clothe the naked. But those people were putting stipulations as well onto who they thought was worthy. Now, do you know how I know this? It's actually because in the text, Jesus begins to ask them, or they begin to ask Jesus, when did we see you hungry? Or when did we see you thirsty? Or when did we see you naked? And you better believe that Christ most certainly told them. And again, I'm paraphrasing here. He told them, when you saw a person whom you deemed low class or not worthy, or they didn't need the help because of what you saw, you didn't help me. And then he goes on to tell them that I don't know you. Go away from me. My friends, those people putting stipulations on people who they think are worthy, they totally missed the boat. And they missed out on an opportunity to do what Christ wanted them to do. When I see that in today's time, that rocks my faith. That almost attacks my faith. When I hear jokes, or when I see all the memes and reels that are posted making fun of or attacking anyone. Now, you know what I'm talking about. You know, some of the jokes, they begin like, what do you call an illegal alien who? Or in an effort to maybe attack the LGBTQ community just because they don't agree, they might post some silly meme that says, I identify as a, insert the attack disguised as a joke on someone's gender. Or they post things about, this politician didn't pass this exam on the first try. First, let me tell you something. As a teacher in the education field in some variety of way for the last 15 years, I didn't even pass the teacher exam the first time. Well, there were several, but the first one I took, I didn't pass the first time. And those of you that know me personally, do you think that that suddenly made me less of a person or less capable or not a good teacher? Would you tell me that to my face? Put my name in there instead of, oh, this politician. Why don't you say, oh, Tara didn't pass the teacher certification on the first try. She's not fit to do whatever it is. I know you've all heard jokes relating to different religious groups, maybe jokes about people of different ethnicities. Honestly, this list could go on. And when those come from the mouths of people who profess to be believers, really all I can think of is the text from 1 Corinthians 13. And yes, that's the old cliche text read at so many weddings. But I think it's poignant in this case when we begin making fun of people or taking stabs at people or posting mean things, again, about anyone. Now, this text really isn't talking about a love in a marriage that way. This is what they call the agape love, and that is like the God love, the unconditional love. This text is telling us more how to act as believers, how we ought to approach things. Are we telling jokes about someone? Are we going to talk about someone? Probably a good rule of thumb is to ask yourself, am I keeping this text in mind when I tell this joke or when I post this meme? Love is patient and kind. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to give you some of the main snippets. Love is kind and patient. Does that go with the joke you're telling or with what you're saying about someone? It doesn't dishonor someone. It doesn't have a big ego. And it goes on to say, even if you possess so many other great qualities, if you don't have that love, or if we don't have that love, we really don't have anything. That kind of thing rocks my faith. When I see innocent children die in any war, and the first thing I hear out of the mouths of believers, and this is an actual quote, well, that's war. Or when I read about the shooting death of someone in a virtual paper, and I start to read the comment sections. Never read the comment sections, by the way. And one of the first posts is, well, what do you expect from that part of town? Or what do you expect from a insert political party town? I really, at this point, can only think of the text of Matthew 5:9, and that's the Beatitudes, which I know many of you are familiar with. Blessed are the peacemakers, for theirs is God's kingdom. That message is so lost during all of those instances. That kind of thing, when it comes from believers, rocks my faith. Now, I'm not saying that there are any easy black and white answers, and I definitely understand there can be a balance. We can have our views, but we need to temper those, or we need to temper the way we express those views. I also know that if we truly want to be radical believers, as Christ was, then we ought to be about the Father's business. Jesus said he was about the Father's business, and that came from the text of Luke 2. Now, in this text, which many of you know again, Christ was only about 12 years old, and he and his family were in the city. And now keep in mind at this time, families travel together in a caravan, and we're not just talking 4 or 5 people. There might be 50 people in this caravan. So when it came time to leave, The family could not find Jesus anywhere. And of course, their parents, they're frantic. They are looking all over the city and getting panicked, and I'm sure getting annoyed and getting scared. Meanwhile, Jesus is in the synagogue, learning and probably no doubt teaching from the rabbis there. Now, he wasn't making a big spectacle about it. He didn't feel attacked. He didn't find something to be offended over. But when his parents finally found him, he even said, and again I'm paraphrasing, "You should have known where I'd be and that I would be doing what I was sent to do." He was about his father's business. The good news is, he even told us what that was and what we need to do. What is the Father's business? Because that's what we need to be about. That's how we need to begin viewing the world around us. We need to be about the business of faith by loving God with our whole heart and then loving our neighbors as ourselves. Now, Jesus even said that these two were the two greatest commandments of all, and that generally fulfilled the law. And those come from the text of Mark 12 and Matthew 22. And FYI, I preface this next part by saying I did take Greek in my undergrad degree, but it is rusty at best. We're talking, nearly 24 years ago that I took this. But in the original Greek in the text, love is generally a verb. Now, I'm not going to bore you with conjugating Greek verbs either. But do know that when this text is speaking, when Jesus is speaking about this, he's not saying to go and love your neighbor in an, "oh, I love you" type of feeling way. He is asking you, what can you do to fulfill my call by helping someone? You see, all that energy and time put into posting and talking about a 15-minute show in the grand scheme of all time probably would be better spent loving or doing for the world around us. My friends, really, I can sum all this up by saying, go and be about the Father's business, whether you're religious or not. In essence, it's saying go and help humanity and make the world a better place. That is what I think on the whole topic of the last few days. Thank you and have a great day.